Hello, very nice to have you join us. I am George McLaughlin with McLaughlin and McLaughlin, and I'm going to narrate, or as they say in the business, do a voiceover for this particular presentation. The generally what we're discussing, and we have an ongoing blog post series which we call subject series. This is on construction claims and disputes. It's about the number 10 or 11th presentation about construction claims and disputes. In this particular situation, we're presenting a case study. Now, a case study is something that is an example or something that is typical, or actually built on, as this one is, on real examples of situations that might present. So this is a case study. In fact, this case study pertains to scope of work on turnkey contracts. So the example here, we're dealing with scope of work, turnkey contract, and we're discussing claims and disputes. As I discussed earlier, this is a case study. It's derived from several actual situations. Now, case studies are examples, and as such, they have emphasis on certain facts, and in other cases some of the details are removed. In other words, we're trying to emphasize a specific point using an actual situation with an emphasis on certain details. Now, in this single point we're emphasizing here has to do with scope of work, and again on a turnkey contract. Now, the reality is that scope of work is the source of most disputes in the engineering and construction business. They're very, very common, and the genesis for many of these disputes resides in the scope definition and how you deal with scope of work or disputes over scope of work. So these are the types of things that you'll find if you read our blog posts, earlier posts. You will see why we focus heavily on scope of work. Now, more specifically, this example that we're using here is more towards the scope of work definition. How do you define the scope of work in lump sum, fixed price? That means hard money or some of the other terms. How do you define the scope of work in lump sum turnkey contracts? This is a little tricky, and so it's something we want to be able to address. So now let's take a look at the case. The situation that we're using here is hypothetical, but it has some basis in real life. And so here we are in the industrial sector, and an owner let's call it owner O, decides to invest in the addition of a hydrogen plant to an existing processing facility. Now, it turns out in this area of the world there are several major international contractors who are capable of performing the entire design, engineering, procurement, construction, commissioning, and startup. These contractors in reality will use their own proprietary technology, or possibly the acquired rights to some proprietary technology. So the owner issued a request for proposal, or RFP, and responsive to the RFP, request for proposal, the owner awarded a contract for the engineering, the procurement, construction, commissioning, and startup to contractor, let's call it contractor C. Now, this is typical of a turnkey project where we see the project defined and the scope of work defined from the starting point, or let's say a performance specification. So here is our hypothetical situation as follows. The contract, remember, has been awarded, and contractor C is performing design and engineering, and they are in progress. Okay, so the design and engineering are in progress by the contractor, which would be part of the turnkey execution. What is normal and customary is that there would be a hazard and operability analysis, sometimes or frequently referred to as a HAZOP. So the HAZOP is, we're at the point in the design development where the HAZOP is being conducted, and that would be a collaborative effort between the contractor and the owner. So the HAZOP is in progress between the contract and owner, and in this case, let's assume that the leader is an independent subject matter expert. It's not people. There are SMEs, or subject matter experts, that specialize in the conduct of HAZOPs. So it would be perfectly acceptable, if not normal and customary, to use a independent SME. That's what we're presuming in this case. So there's no presumed the presumption is that the SME is independent without prejudice. Okay? So let's have a statement of the problem. So here's the problem that arises. Remember, it's regarding scope of work and a dispute under a lump sum turnkey situation. So during the HAZOP, okay, this dispute arises between the owner O and the contractor C. What is the dispute? Well, owner O contends that the design is missing a significant number of automated controls and instrumentation. In other words, owner O is looking for, in the design, for a great deal more automation than what they are seeing. So what are the positions here? What do we see the various parties' position emerging? Well, the contractor C's position is as follows: that the additional controls and instrumentation being demanded by O are unnecessary and in essence are what we refer to in a slang way as gold plating. Contractor C contends that they have many plants operating around the world and do not have these extensive automation and controls that are being requested, if not demanded, by the owner. These additional controls are not needed to meet the performance specifications of the contract. And further, C contends that these changes are worth, and they price them up at $10 million US dollars. And they also say, not to mention it taking 3 additional months to execute the project. So the contractor's taking a pretty aggressive position worth 10 million bucks and 3 months additional. Okay, so where is the owner? Well, owner O's position is as follows: that the additional controls and instrumentation are necessary to allow the plant to be operated by a limited staff, thereby reducing the operating costs for this plant. And the owner O points to a provision in the contract that requires the plant to be automated such that minimum staffing would be required. Okay, so here we have two opinions. The contractor says, hey, we have lots of plants operating with this degree of control and instrumentation and automation. If you want to add it, well, we can do it, but it'll cost you $10 million and add 3 months to the execution. The owner O disagrees with that and thinks that the contractor is obliged to provide them with this at no extra cost and no extra schedule. So we've discussed the project and the status. Now let's draw a few potential conclusions that relate to avoidance concepts, in essence what they are. How can we avoid these kinds of things? Well, the first and obvious, but necessarily not easily done, is to make sure that the scope definition, the scope of work that is sufficiently robust. That is to say that the definition has enough detail to make the intent clear. And this, of course, at the risk of stating the obvious, this detail needs to be part of the contract. So you need to sweep the contractor's scope of work proposal, and the contractor has to make sure that the contract contains enough to make the intent clear. The second point is to ensure that and I just commented on it, that the contractor's proposed scope definition, what they intend, is part of the contract. For if it's part of simply part of their proposal, but it's not incorporated into the contract, there may be some problems with utilizing it as a baseline. The contract is typically the baseline. And I'm not saying that from a legal point of view, as we are not lawyers. I'm saying it from a project management point of view. We have to establish a baseline. That's typical for all project management. You establish a baseline and then you measure against it. The third point is relative to pricing, and that is to make sure that the contract has enough pricing and, frankly, some sort of change specification so that you have more than simply the changes clause in the front of the contract. We need more detail. What sort of pricing, how do we deal with the change specification? Could deal with pricing, could deal with methods of establishing the pricing, and should include how to deal with time. What sort of time analysis should be performed? What's the methodology? What are the conclusions? What's pricing? Do we get overheads? What are they? And so forth. And that should be addressed as well. So in summary and conclusions and so forth, we've given you a quick look at a potential case study. We'll have more case studies that tend to highlight simple concepts and so forth. So we'll have other issues in later presentations. This is really one of the areas where McLaughlin and McLaughlin M&M offers a great deal of expertise. We have many years of dealing with contracting for executing in various strategies. In fact, one of our other presentations, which is done with the YouTube embed, is has to do with execution strategies. But this is one of the areas where we're extremely comfortable in dealing with. And so if you need this sort of help or you're interested in evaluating it further, go to our website, which is mclaughlinandmclaughlin.com, wherein you can find methods of contacting us. So thank you very much for your time. This is George McLaughlin. We appreciate your support of our blog. And if you have any comments, let us know. You can find out how to contact us on either the blog or the website. So thank you and have a great day.